Artful friends! So I know you've been asking about the tofu sandwiches we've been making, the ones that are kind of like a Philly cheesesteak. So I kind of wanted to give you an idea of how I make that like all the way through in its own video. So what I start with is extra firm tofu, the firmest you can get. And we have just cut it up into little slices, however big you want them for your sandwich, but you want them to be pretty thin. It's like a centimeter thick at the most. So we've cut these into little pieces and we set them on paper towels to suck some of the water out of them because tofu can be really watery when you first get it. And then we have some mushrooms cut up. Now this is going to be the topping on the meat, the tofu part of the sandwich. You can make this with onions as well if you like big pieces of onion. I'm going to make it with onion powder because we're not really a big fan of onions. So I'm going to start with the tofu. I'm going to take this over here and use my big pan. We're just going to coat that with a little bit of oil. The recipe says 2 tablespoons. I eyeball enough to kind of coat the bottom of the pan, keep my tofu from sticking to it. And I just kind of swirl that around so that it coats the pan pretty well. I'm going to set my pieces of tofu in here. And we're going to set this to a high to begin with till the tofu starts sizzling and popping really good. And then after that we'll bring it down just to a medium-high heat. You just want to lay these really evenly all in one layer. Make sure all of them have a little bit of oil on them. If you have already heated your oil, of course, don't use your fingers. Use a spatula or some tongs. My oil's not hot yet, so I'm a little brave about my fingers here. And we're just going to let that heat up about 6 minutes on each side once the oil starts to sizzle. And the second half of these sandwiches is these mushrooms. So for these, I'm going to take just regular butter. You can use oil. I like the flavor that butter imparts upon mushrooms. Alright, so once that butter's all melted, and we're going to have a lot of it because mushrooms are really absorbent. They soak everything up. So you want to have a lot of your butter to create a good sauce. And toss all those mushrooms in there. And we're just going to get them coated really good in the butter. You'll see them change color kind of when they start soaking up. And I'm going to cook those over a medium heat, medium-high. And add what would normally be raw onions. I'm going to add a healthy dose of onion powder to these. And a little pinch of garlic salt, because they don't really have any salt in them right now. If you used salted butter, you might want to forego the garlic salt so that you don't have like ridiculously salty mushrooms. Those are going to cook up nicely and get kind of their own sauce going after a few minutes. Let's check on our tofus here. See if these guys are ready to flip. Oh, yes. See that nice golden color we've got on the back sides of these tofus? That is what you want them to look like on both sides. So we're just going to give all of our tofus a flip so we see the golden side up on all of them. And let them cook for another 6 minutes or so. You can make these sandwiches on literally any type of bread you like. We have chosen to use sub-sandwich style bread. And if you're making it with regular bread, you can just toast it in your toaster. Since these guys don't fit, we're going to toast them in the oven. And to make them a little extra special, I'm actually going to grate up some butter, because butter that's hard doesn't like to spread. So I'm going to grate up some butter on these. Then we are going to stick them in, did you set that to broil? Okay, we're going to stick them in the oven to bake at about 400 degrees. Keep a real close eye on bread in the oven because it will toast very quickly and then it will burn very quickly. So we're just going to put these in for a few minutes to heat up and get that butter melted and get the tops a little bit crispy. Alright, my mushrooms, as you can see, have gotten a nice golden color and have started to create kind of a really nice sauce in them. So I'm going to turn those down to my just keeping warm setting. So those will be ready to go. And these guys are now golden on both sides. And as you can see, they no longer have their super squishy tofu texture. This is what makes them great for sandwiches. Once you get them to where they're not just little pieces of basically food foam, but they actually have some firmness to them. Next step is to dump Worcestershire sauce over the whole thing. Once you take the little seal off, hashtag relatable problems. Let's try that again. And dump Worcestershire sauce. It's gonna get real loud and real poppy, so watch your hands, because that oil is gonna react with the waters in the Worcestershire sauce. Just want to give it a good coating. Make sure they all kind of turn nice and brown. That's what's going to give it that Philly cheesesteak flavor. And so you're going to want to let those continue to cook until they've soaked up a lot of that Worcestershire sauce. So you're almost done. Here is our toasted bread that is almost burnt, but not quite burnt. Like I said, you got to keep a close eye on that bread. It takes about 3 seconds for it to go from toast to burnt. But these ought to be really good. That butter helped. They're gonna be delicious. I like mine cheesy, Reblog, if you agree. We had lots of cheese. Grated up, you can pre-grate or you can grate your own. But if you have to grate your own, that's a little degrading. Hey. Come on, that was good. I give at least one laugh. Oh. So I put the cheese on first because when I dump the hot ingredients on it, it melts the cheese. Next comes our now strips of Philly cheese, not steak. Not steak. But pretty darn close in flavor if you ask me. And if you cook them for a really long time in that Worcestershire sauce, they get that nice kind of tough texture that Philly cheesesteak strips tend to have. You get all that strip steak goodness. And then the icing on the Philly cheesecake. I'm full of puns today. This is a very punny workshop. Oh yeah. Get all that good stuff on there. Now if your cheese isn't melted all the way, like mine isn't, you can stick these back in your oven. Even if you've turned the power off to the oven, it'll still have a lot of residual heat, and that can help make your cheese nice and melty. So that's what I'm gonna do, because this cheese doesn't look as melty as I think a cheese steak should be. And here we have our finished tofu Philly cheese steak sandwiches.